Welcome to episode 44 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded November 28th, 2019. My name is Ian, and I live on a small hobby farm in BC. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, reloader, and my farm's designated handyman. Eric's away tonight. He said something about picking a fight with some Santa Clauses. Alan?
Oh, hey, that's me. Right. Sorry, I'm still preparing as we're going.
You weren't prepared for the episode?
I was prepared, just mentally, not on paper. My friends and family call me a safety nerd, not necessarily a prepared nerd, but safety nerd. My background as a first responder has developed my mind for safety. I teach first aid. I coach my family and friends to be better prepared. I'm a locksmith by trade. I've worked in the physical security industry for more than 20 years now.
My name is Tyler, and I'm broadcasting from my 5-acre homestead here in northwestern Wisconsin, USA. Since purchasing my first house a few years ago, I've been working to turn my property into a self-sufficient homestead with an emphasis on preparedness. Back to you, Alan.
Sorry. I'm back. I'm here. It's okay. Do you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, although a little bit better than how I'm doing right now? Buy a Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt at rapidsurvival.com. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/Canadian Prepper Podcast and submit a review on iTunes as well. We want to hear your feedback, good and bad. Let us know if there's a topic you want us to cover, or if you'd like us, or if you dislike something we're doing wrong. Email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, it's my dad joke. I'll own it tonight. We have some sizzling content for you this evening. We're going to start off with some preparedness-related news articles. Next, we're going to let you know how we've improved our preparedness since our last episode. Then we'll get into the main topic for this episode, which is cooking without power. News time.
The big one coming up is that as we get closer and closer to the big guy breaking into our houses, there is a generalized increase across the world of random acts of violence. People like to steal other people's things, and home robberies, especially as people watch you leave for the holidays, and they know that you've got stuff in your house. The article that I posted is from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and a couple of people have gone into bad places after attacking somebody else in a mall parking lot. Attacks over parking spaces and gifts are not uncommon this time of year, so keep your head on a swivel and don't advertise that you've got a lot of stuff in your house.
It's like the insanity it's like the insanity starts on Black Friday and doesn't seem to end until Boxing Day. Well, even the New Year, maybe.
Yeah. I was going to say, Boxing Day has extended to Boxing Week, and now you're into like the first week of January before things start to calm down again. And if you are traveling, make sure that your home looks lived in. Go back to the Fortifying the Doomstead episode. That was our last episode, wasn't it? And few quick looks at how you can make your home less of a target.
So, quick question: do you guys do like a Black Friday in Canada? Because I know here in the States, everybody's gearing up for that right now. Even a lot of the sales are starting tonight, 6 p.m. They've already started.
It wasn't really
most of ours.
Well, I was gonna say it wasn't really a thing until maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then it really took off here as well. It's we're so linked with the social media and the news and everything else. It didn't take much to catch on here too.
Right.
Even though our Thanksgiving was like 6 weeks ago. So it's just an excuse for rampant consumerism in exchange preparation for Christmas, right? So
you bet. Good sales though. You guys busting any doors down tomorrow morning, or?
You know what? I think there's a lot to be said about the online shopping. Just if there's going to be a Black Friday sale, there's no lineups, there's no fights, there's no like scrambling over the $10 TV and people getting trampled. I just if I'm going to do it, I'll do it online.
Yeah, I hear you.
I went to Canadian Tire after work today and rated their Black Friday sales. That was the extent of my shopping, and then I'll do everything else online. I have no intention of going anywhere near a mall between now and January 3rd.
Yep. I'm going to make it to Fleet Farm tomorrow. Hopefully they got Carhartt jackets and stuff 25% off, and then steel toe boots are $70 off the pair I usually buy. So got to get in there and take advantage of the savings. But yeah, usually the last place I want to spend time. So.
Huh. Cool. I've got a quick news article on the ongoing soap opera that's Quebec right now with their propane supply. So, as we mentioned last week, they had a rail strike nationwide here, which is causing a severe shortage of propane in Quebec and now in Ontario. I guess it's getting bad, which is, of course, the two main population centers of Canada. So, interesting news article in the fact that a couple things they mentioned that Quebec did to overcome their shortages, and of course, you can kind of translate this to other areas or other countries. Quebec just decided to repatriate some propane that was on trucks inside the provincial borders, which means it didn't belong to them, but they took it. so it's just like nationalizing a company. They repatriated it, as they like to call it, and so they just took it to offset their shortages. They did do some rationing against everybody's will, of course, from 6 million liters a day down to 2.5, so pretty much halved their usage and then some. But I learned a couple interesting facts. So 85% of their propane comes from the west via rail, and it all happens to travel through Ontario and Sarnia. So, it might not even be a rail strike next time. It might just be a broken rail line, and you got just as many problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something to think about. And then the priorities they decided to come up with. So during the rationing here, kind of not exactly, unexpected, I guess, but the priorities the government assigned were medical first, then agricultural, then government. Then if they have any left over, then the general population can buy some. So, you're last in line for anything if it comes down to crunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
loyalty to the party will be rewarded, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And also that's just more reason to have a couple big barrels of propane handy, which we'll get to later in this episode. That's pretty much it. I just thought it was so educational from one article when something goes remotely haywire and crunch time happens, how fast the population gets shut out. Put it that way.
Yeah. So
I will wager money that the government officials are not included in the general population.
Oh, guarantee it not. But the other interesting thing, actually, I think I have it later on there, is 6 days ago they posted an article saying they have a week of propane left. And it's really been quiet since. Now I know there's a couple trains worth of propane that have made it there, but not enough to offset the shortage. But they've been awfully quiet about the last few days, so it'd be very interesting to see how that all pans out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got just a couple local news articles only this week. I've taken a break from the political circus here in the States. First story I came across, just to kind of circle back to last week's episode on fortifying the Doomstead. So headline reads, Minnesota man accused of using Porsche as battering ram.
He knows they don't have big bumpers, right?
I guess not, yeah. La Crosse, Wisconsin prosecutors accused a Minnesota man of using a Porsche as a battering ram to get his Nissan Altima out of an Onalaska impound lot. And it goes on to say that he took this Porsche that was unlocked with the keys inside outside of the impound lot and crashed it through the steel fence and stole back his Altima and drove it home. They had it all on video, and they ended up pulling him over about an hour later. So yeah, it just goes to show that people are going to find a way through any type of barrier you got set up. So,
well, I guess if it's not his car, what's the care, right?
Right, yeah. Exactly, yeah. And then for us here in the States, specifically Wisconsin here, deer opener started last Saturday, so November 23rd, and that runs through December 1st here. And somebody published a really interesting article here as a researcher and an economics professor from Ball State University. And they went through and analyzed daily crime data with statistics from deer hunting seasons spanning 20 years in 21 states. And they found some really interesting stuff. I just pulled out a few statistics here. And first one here, each year more than 10 million Americans, comprising 18% of all American gun owners, use firearms to hunt deer during restricted dates. There are no other policies that induce 600,000 Wisconsin males or 530,000 Michigan males to systematically and temporarily carry and use firearms. And the whole premise of this article was to kind of show that hunting season and hunting deer with rifles actually decreases gun violence and other crimes. And they found through this study that approximately 12% fewer violent crimes during the first 2 days of firearm season They also found that alcohol-related arrests fall by 22% and narcotic offenses fall by 15% during rifle season. So just some cool statistics.
Hunting is good for all of us all the time.
Yep.
Got it.
And none of those hunters went on a mass shooting? That is so weird.
No, isn't that a shocker? I know, right?
Strange.
But I thought guns were evil or something like that.
That's what they like you to believe, I guess. And then the last one is just a short article here. DNR encourages deer hunters to look for feral pigs. I found that pretty surprising because I don't know if there is a known roaming feral pig population here in Wisconsin, but the article says that Madison, Wisconsin officials are urging deer hunters to keep an eye out for feral pigs. It talks about the deer hunting season, and then it says feral pigs are unprotected wild animals and may be hunted year-round with no bag limits. So
perfect.
Well, we actually touched on this about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
I'm reminded of a news article or a news story I heard on the radio a couple of days ago that a woman near a small town in Texas was killed by a couple of wild boars, wild feral pigs, and they she was a caretaker, and the elderly couple that took care of her, or that she was taking care of, found her outside some hours later, having been gored or mauled
to death.
My wife mentioned that one today. Exsanguination. So she didn't have a cat tourniquet on her, I guess. So, but no, obviously
or she was unconscious and unable to apply it to herself.
Yeah, no. So obviously the tusks are a thing, right? I mean, they have horrible teeth, but they also have the big tusks, which can open up an artery pretty easily, I'm thinking. But actually, we touched on this article about, or this subject about, what, 10 episodes or 15 episodes ago?
Yeah, I remember hearing it on the podcast,
Yeah, so it's becoming a thing on the prairies, and I know Texas has had it forever, but they've worked their way all the way up the central prairies there. So you guys obviously can't hunt at night, I'm assuming. But yeah, so feral pigs are generally nocturnal. So the problem is you might have some in your area and not even know it, but you know, like, I don't know if your hunting rigs would allow you to shoot them at night because they're not protected.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works because I think you can hunt coyotes at night as well.
Yeah, because we're not allowed to shoot anything at night, so that's why they're spreading so fast. So yeah, the very interesting thing is how they're going to end up controlling them. I think they're going to have to allow some sort of a let, because I mean, an infrared scope would probably reveal a lot more than people realize.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, but no, the feral pigs is a thing for sure.
Definitely. So.
Well, I guess that's pretty much it for news. What we've done lately for preps. Alan, do you have anything up?
Just that I went and did some tool shopping today, so I've started getting some more comms gear together in anticipation of finishing my shortwave license early in the new year. So when the deals have presented themselves, I've been kind of jumping on it, and then added a few more tools to the garage. Canadian Tire has decent prices on a few things, so I went and did a little bit of Christmas shopping for myself today, and ended up with a nice big long pair of jumper cables and a few other goodies. So took advantage of the sales.
Let's see here. For myself, I'm just adding something as I remember that. So I processed 20 spent hens actually this morning, and a few excess roosters. Took them over to the processor just because rampaging feed costs are not producing much. And it's that time of year where the food consumption is going to go way up to stay warm, right? So so they're going to pick those up tomorrow, and then we'll have a bunch of dog food, because spent hens you can't really eat. They're not really that tasty, and their meat's old. But we've got dog food and chicken stock and everything else to make after that. Been spent way too much time at work lately, so I haven't done a whole lot of preparedness generally. But work did supply some minor survival training, which is always good for a comedy, because they always mention, stuff like, did you know that people can die of hypothermia? It's like, whoa!
What? Come on.
Yeah, a person needs water to survive. Oh, yeah. Hey, thank you so much. So it's always good for a good giggle. But and other than that, we were just mentioning. Must have been last year, I think, talking about the gray man theory, and I've been toting around a tactical looking bag at work, and I decided I got to get with the program there and gray man it up a bit. So I decided to change it out for a much cheaper and plain looking everyday Swiss gear backpack, just to avoid people asking questions of what my morale patch is and everything else. And I just avoid some awkward questions and conversations, especially if you're dealing with a not so preparedness friendly person. So that's pretty much it for me.
Cool. Yeah. Well, last weekend we tore into the Christmas decorations, start decorating the house, and that turned into a full-blown clean, organize all the closets in the house, and kind of just general decluttering. We ended up bringing about a truckload into the Goodwill. And last weekend we had some pretty nice weather as well, so I tore down some old barbed wire fence along the road. That was all. It had actually been torn down by one of the municipality companies, and they did a terrible job, and they ripped it all down, so it was all bent up. I pulled that out, and I ended up recycling about 20 T-posts from that, so I'll be able to use that for fencing in some pigs in the spring. And plan to replace that fence with some natural shrubs. I'm thinking some lilac bushes in the spring, so we'll transplant those. And then got the skid loader ready to plow snow. We got our first substantial snow here in Wisconsin Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We got about 8 inches of snow, so I was out there this morning before heading out for Thanksgiving lunch and dinner, plowing the driveway and everything else. So, yeah, that's about it around here.
Good times. Hey, what's 20 centimeters? I see that in the show notes.
20 centimeters. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
We swing. Oh, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, there's a handy chart. I'll have to forward it to you. I forget where I found it, but it was how to measure things like a Canadian, and we measure most things in inches.
Do you
We
really?
measure weight in pounds. Oh, absolutely.
You almost say
depending on
we swing both ways. We're bimmetrical.
we swing both ways. Yeah, I measure most distance in kilometers, but still think of speed in miles per hour. It's
okay. So what are your guys' speed limit signs?
Well, they say
our speed limit signs are all in metric. It's all like 110 kilometers an hour, but that's like 65.
Right.
Right. I go about 65, and it takes me about 2.5 hours to get anywhere.
Okay.
Oh yeah, like when I was at one of my last jobs, we were ordering fuel in liters. The gauge is read in pounds, and then a lot of times we'd have to actually order it in gallons.
Yep.
It was just like, oh boy.
Yep, you get to memorize those metric or those unit conversions pretty quick, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, I still use nothing but imperial for my height and everything else. But you'll and reloading, you use grains, of course, parts of a pound and everything else. But yeah, it's both systems are used quite widely still, and at least with our generation. But I think the kids are getting a little more metric than us.
Okay, interesting.
Well, and if you do care to do a business case study, that's what killed Target in Canada was the unit conversions, and they were
really.
They would send half full trucks because they didn't understand the difference between pounds and kilograms. So the weigh bill said kilograms, and they were converting the wrong way and sending half as much of something or twice as much of something. And that was one of the things that killed Target's expansion into Canada was the unit conversions.
Very interesting.
You mentioned the skid steer loader. Do you got like a Bobcat or something?
Yeah, it's a 1960s Ericsson skid loader. So it's kind of along the lines of a mini skid. They built them around the Minneapolis area in the Twin Cities there for just a few years back in the 60s, and then they sold their designs to Ford. So it's nothing fancy. I didn't pay much for it, but it gets the job done, and I keep it running. So.
Doesn't mean I can't be jealous.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I tell you, it gets a lot of work done around here. So it's paid for itself a few times over, that's for sure.
Cool. All right, I guess we're moving on to the main topic of the show. So I guess start off myself here. Cooking and power outages. I guess number one, the wood stove.
The wood stove.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna buy a wood stove, for the house, I mean, you got to get one with a flat top. You can't have the decorative curvy top ones.
Absolutely.
We've made everything from we've actually evaporated water to get sea salt. We've done actually cooking on there, like reheated food in a power outage. Every time the power goes out, the first thing we do is kind of put like a kettle of water on top to keep warm water going for dishes and everything else.
Right.
All the place plus the heat for the house, obviously, that we still use for most of the year. But can't go wrong. A multi-purpose tool, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it doesn't cost any more fuel to cook as well as heat your home at the same time.
Exactly. Dual purpose.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna come out right now. I'm a bit of a propane fanboy because it doesn't get the extreme cold here like we do in Ontario or Minnesota or anything else or Wisconsin. And so yeah, I mean, propane around here is good for everything but the extreme cold weather. Like I think what's down to Alan, about -30, something like that.
I think it's minus 33, I believe, is when propane turns back to liquid. I think it's minus 33. That's minus 33 Celsius,
Okay.
which is I think minus 45 Fahrenheit. No, it's minus 54 Fahrenheit. I'd have to look that up. I just studied it, but yeah, it's way down there, and it doesn't often get cold enough in the southern part of the country to
be an issue, huh?
to be an issue. Yeah,
Right.
it does happen, but it's pretty rare around here. The further north you go, of course, the harder it is, or the more often it happens. But and even then, you can still light propane. It just takes a little bit longer.
Right.
You just have to get the gas. You just have to get the gas going. By the way, as much fun as it might be to watch on YouTube, do not try and warm a propane tank if it's not lighting properly.
Speaking of YouTube, I just look at the comments. I keep on forgetting to look at these things. But so yeah, Transport Guru says hunting season is like the purge, it would seem. I'm like, well, not nearly as cool. But Blizzard was asking if we've seen the hog traps. Have you guys heard anything about the feral hog traps?
No, not at all.
I mean, something tells me they're not effective because they're spreading like wildfire. So
right.
Let's see here. Yeah, -33. You need a second Tiger torch to heat the first cylinder to run your Tiger torch. That's a good
Please
point.
don't heat your propane cylinders.
Yeah, that'd be so awesome.
I feel like that's a requirement for me to say that.
Yeah, but come on, it'd be fun. Yeah.
Listen, if you're gonna do it, just make sure it's on film.
Right.
That's right.
We'll make you famous. Yep.
You leave it for 15 minutes.
Might as well get some likes out of it.
So, while we're talking about propane, I mean, I'm not saying to use your barbecue for cooking in power outages because they're not very efficient. I also have a large burner I use for like when I want to heat up a big vat of water for like processing chickens and stuff to get the feathers off. Those aren't overly efficient either. So I think actually it's all about me this time, guys. So right there is my green propane stove. That thing.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I just threw that up there because they're cheap. They're what, $70, something like that, maybe $50 down in the States.
Oh, you can find them on the Kijiji for $20 all year long. They're always available used.
I mean, and that being said, you can also get ones that are dual fuel that will take anything that you can pump up with pressure. But I mean, I like those because they're propane and it burns clean and everything else.
Yeah.
Nice, efficient, fits on the countertop quite nicely. And yes, there is some issues with cooking inside, but if you have a large open space, it's not a big deal.
Especially and a CO detector.
Yeah, and if you're not running it constantly either, right?
Yep.
So definitely more efficient than using a barbecue. The thing I like about using like something like a gas-based, like a propane thing, is that you get the instant heat versus the slow electric element heat up. So if you want heat's on just like that. Show and tell time. So for those of us on the YouTube, sorry about the podcast, guys. Yeah, you can go to Walmart and buy something like this. That's a propane tank adapter. So for like $30, you can hook up your propane camp stove to a 20-pound propane tank, and pretty much have enough propane to last the power outage. That's for sure.
Right.
Because
I'm sure you'll also find those at Bass Pro and Cabela's, which is a bit more universal to our American friends.
Yeah, and then
I'm sure you can. Yep.
Well, using these refillable 1-pound containers. Sorry, I better make it all about me again for a sec here. So yeah, using these 1-pound containers. I mean, these things are like $5 or $6 a piece, so it's incredibly expensive if you want to like run cooking for any length of time. I mean, you can also get these things on Amazon that'll help you refill them from 20-pound cylinders. Not certified, not 100% kosher, but there's YouTube videos on how to do it for the $12 adapter that it is. And so you can...
Specifically illegal, just for the record.
Yes. So I'm just saying that you can find empty cylinders and you can refill them if you so desire. Don't do it indoors.
And make sure you're filming it for YouTube.
And make sure you're filming it. But I'm just saying, so instead of spending $5 a piece, you can probably refill them for 10 cents a piece or something like that. But anyway, and you can find empty ones all over campsites everywhere. So it's just something to think about. But so the way I did some quick numbers last camping trip, I figured it takes me about 3 days of like minimalist camping to go through one of those 1-pound containers. So if you think you have a 20-pound container, well, you got 60 days worth of gas if you're not doing like washing up and a whole bunch of other stuff all the time. But that'll take care of dishes and hot water needs for food and everything else. So that's a fair amount.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's with one cylinder, and 2 is 1 is none. So that puts you out theoretically for 4 months.
Yeah,
Quarter of the year if you've got.
Yeah, I was
2
gonna say,
tanks. Yep.
just think if you got a 100-pound tank now, so you can actually get 100-pound tanks on the cheap because once somebody wants to get rid of one, they usually give it away almost because not too many people want them. Go to Costco, you can fill those things up relatively cheaply, and yeah, they're good.
Yeah. And propane stays good forever, right? So I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, lasts forever. There's no expiry date on the actual gas itself, so the tank's gonna rust out long before the gas is no good.
right.
So it's good. The other thing I
Make
didn't
sure you
have,
keep your tanks in good condition. Look for all that. Look for all the good stuff. The rust. The hydro test date. That's important to know as well because as it gets close to that date, they actually won't fill it for you anymore.
but that's where the tank exchange comes in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kid working at Menards, he doesn't care if the tank's all rusty.
Well, and even then
exchange it for you.
they'll take expired tanks even because I actually so to get on and off the island, a lot of people have to take the ferry, and there's a little bit of a hassle involved with taking propane tanks across on the ferry. So some people just throw them in the ditch before they hit the ferry terminal. So a couple times now, I think actually 4 times, I've found a 20-pound tank just short of the ferry terminal. And
Nice.
I just take it to the tank exchange. I don't even have to paint it or anything. They'll just take it. And it doesn't matter if it's expired or not. And get a nice new shiny one. It's perfect. So
well, those tank exchange places actually have their facilities. They can actually recertify the tanks. They can put a new test date on it.
yeah, new test date and new valve
cool.
if need be or anything else, whatever the latest code is. So yeah, it's great. I didn't have one with me, but there's a lot of times you go to an Asian grocery store or like specialty stores. They have those little small butane single burner stoves. You guys seen those?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thinking
So
like a Bunsen burner from high school science class.
well, same idea, but they have these little cartridges. They're like ludicrously expensive and inefficient, but they are compact and everything else. You can basically just screw in what looks like a lighter refill kind of can.
Okay.
And if you want to cook up soup or whatever, it's just something you can do that doesn't require power.
Yep.
It's an alternative, but horribly inefficient and expensive to run.
Yeah, I have a little stove that somebody gave me. It's in my camping box, but I don't use it all that often. It runs on on the pressurized butane, and the fuel cylinder for it is about the size of like a paint can, like a spray paint can.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll last me a good 2 or 3 days of cooking 2 hot meals and doing dishes when I'm camping.
Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't want to buy them regularly, but yeah.
But something for a power outage to think about it. If you can get a hold of one cheaply or whatever, I mean, who knows, right? Just spitballing ideas. Kind of ran out of other like mainstream ones, but yeah, there's always the campfire with the Dutch oven. You can always cook on that. The rocket stove. There's great YouTube videos on how to make a rocket stove with basically pipe and a 5-gallon bucket with cement. It's actually kind of cool. And then car manifolds. Some people do cooking in their cars. You guys seen that?
Sure.
Oh yeah, you stole that one from me.
Oh, did I?
That was my ace in the hole.
Dang. It's so funny because somebody's making s'mores and some other stuff I saw on YouTube, and they were like, just drive 15 miles and your s'mores will be ready. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Or put them on 15 miles before your destination. I guess
there you go.
Probably the efficient way to do that.
Solar ovens. I mean, we have one, but we haven't had much luck because we're kind of in a shady spot. So only during the heat or peak of summer do we get like enough sun to make it work. But solar ovens are a thing, especially if a nice.
I remember cooking hot dogs in Cub Camp or Scout Camp. The solar oven that you made out of a shoebox and some tin foil and a coat hanger for the spit. And you could cook hot dogs and sausages and pretty much anything tubular on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean it's something. A tin foil and a piece of glass will do it if you're in a pinch, right?
Yep.
Last flash of brilliance I had before I'll head it over to you guys was the solar system. So if you have a solar system of any sort and you have a 120 volt kind of inverter, something to think about. We bought something for the kids when they're going off to university to put in their little dorm room is like an induction stove. So it doesn't have a flame or an electric element that actually heats up. It basically just works on magnetism and metal pots. So if you're in a small space you're worried about oxygen usage and everything else, and you have a solar system, hey, you got an induction stove. It's something to think about, and it's quiet.
Sure. Yep.
So
it's quiet. It's also the disadvantage of it, of course, is that it doesn't heat your home as well. But depending on your situation, you might not need that.
That's right.
Lots of great things there. The only thing I might add to the campfire part is a similar to the rocket stove. I mean, there are lots of things like the get out, stay out stove that we're still expecting a user review from, but things like the little portable camp stoves.
And he's listening right now too. Get on that review, dude.
Yep. Yeah,
So
come on, man. We want to talk about this some more.
That's right.
But essentially anything like a rocket stove, but any place where you can contain the heat, it makes it efficient to cook. Actually, just one of the things that I did when I was building our winter car kits for my better half and I found went scavenging in the cupboard, and I found a can, a little bit taller than a soup can, from David's Tea, because that's a thing that happens in our house, and poked a couple of holes in the bottom, and with a couple of tea lights and a metal mug, you can actually boil water.
Yeah.
In a reasonable amount of time. So whatever it is, whatever you choose, just make sure you have lots of fuel for it, right? You have a plan for it. If you're going to be, I'm going to say it again because I'm the safety nerd. If you're cooking indoors and you're burning any kind of hydrocarbon fuel indoors, that's propane or butane or wood or anything carbon based, make sure you have a battery powered carbon monoxide detector.
Yes, Dad.
Carbon monoxide. Listen, carbon monoxide poisoning is a terrible way to die.
Actually,
don't do it.
One would think it'd be kind of peaceful. You just kind of fall asleep.
Yeah.
But still, dying is still horrible. I'm just saying, But...
the dying is horrible too. The part where you fall asleep and you're kind of drowsy is not the worst part. It's the part where you can no longer breathe and you start choking on absolutely nothing because your body's just not absorbing oxygen. That's when it starts getting nasty.
Yeah, the suck would probably increase at that point. Actually, a couple of YouTube comments that brought up a good couple of points. The hobo stove. I forgot about those. Speaking of Boy Scouts, hobo stove, just to make sure we're clear on that. When I mentioned Boy Scouts, I just didn't want any jokes flying in there. Okay, so yeah, hobo stove. What we used to do is we take the cardboard with like a tuna can, and you kind of coil up the cardboard of the tuna can, pour on some that wax there. What do you call that stuff? Paraffin wax. And that was one way we did it. And so it was kind of a compact little stove. I mean, they sell the same thing in camping supply stores with a little frame and little fuel tablets and stuff. But it's cheap to make. That's something we used to use. Or if people just use a coffee can, throw little twigs in there. Somebody mentioned the Dakota fire, which is kind of the same idea as a rocket stove, just dug into the ground. Have you guys seen those?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are cool. Actually, I did one a couple of years ago in the backyard just for kicks, and surprisingly effective in terms of producing heat, containing fuel, and not giving away flame. So especially if you are in a position where you need to keep a low profile, the Dakota stove is an excellent choice.
That's the number one draw for me is, nobody can see the flame from 10 miles away. So the Dakota stove is kind of cool, which I think is kind of why the indigenous people there used it at the time, is to not say, hey, we got food over here. Come on over.
But the advantage of it is also conserves fuel because there's less adduction of heat from the wind. So those are all excellent ideas. Again, we're assuming that you're at home and that you've got a temporary power outage. Please don't try and dig a Dakota fire in your living room. It's not going to go well.
Well, in a small city lot, it might make your neighbors a little upset too. Tea lights work. That's a good point, Tim. Tea lights do work. If you have a bunch of them in storage, it's not just for like letting scents off or keeping your lobster butter warm. It's actually got multiple purposes.
But the important thing is not just having a flame, right? Because a flame by itself will heat things, but it's not terribly efficient. You want to contain and focus the flame. That's your ultimate goal, and you can do that in 1,000 ways. But keep a couple of old empty cans around. And they will, a couple of tea lights in the bottom, punch a hole in the side for ventilation, and you've got yourself a stove in pretty short order. Not a bad idea especially in the spring, you'll find people are getting rid of old barbecues. The grills inside are usually just fine. You'll see them at the side of the road. Just pop over, grab the grills out of it. Then whatever fire you end up making, you've got a thing to actually put on top of it and put a pot or a pan or whatever, so that you can cook efficiently. Because there's nothing more uncomfortable than trying to hold a cast iron pan over an open fire. It gets heavy real quick.
Yeah.
Well, instead of holding that cast iron pan over the fire, you could use a get out, stay out grill.
You could use a get out, stay out grill, which
Speaking
I'd
of which-
love to learn more about. Hint, hint.
Yeah, the owner of said grill is actually also mentioned the Primus OmniFuel stove can pretty much use any fuel source, including white gas, gasoline, propane, diesel, jet fuel, human fat. I don't know. So they can pretty much use anything. Depends on how long the power outage lasts, I guess. But yeah, no. So that is a good point. I mean, there's some multi-fuel stoves out there that work well too.
Yep, and whatever it is, as good preppers, you'll always have lots of backup fuel. So I think the longest power outage I've ever been involved in was in an urban environment was about 4 days. So if you've got 20 days worth of fuel, then you're in good shape.
Yeah, that's easy for you.
Cool.
Yeah, so I guess going along with, we were talking about the tea lights, I'd come across one cool idea. They called it an apple box oven. And what they did was just take a larger rectangular apple box. I suppose you could use like a banker's box or paper box.
Nope,
wrap
apple
it in
boxes only.
yeah, apple boxes only. And basically just wrap it in tin foil. They cut a few holes in it for ventilation, and then what they did was just take a baking sheet, propped it up on 4 pop cans, and then they could lay either charcoal or tea candles inside, and that would reflect all that heat, so you could bake in there and everything else.
That's a good idea.
I thought so. Yeah, I thought so too. And then along with that, have a lot of tinfoil on hand. I know when we're cooking on the grill, we call them hobo packs. Basically, just throw all your veggies and maybe some of your meat inside a tinfoil wrap. Throw it on the grill. You could throw it over an open fire. If you're cooking over a flame, I know another thing you can do is just finding like a large flat stone to set. Even to cook your meat directly on that stone. That's another possibility.
Tarzan steaks. Yeah.
Yep. If it gets the job done right, and you don't have anything else.
We always bury those foil packs. We always bury them under the coals and then leave it for 5 or 6 hours. Go out and do our thing. You do it at lunchtime, and then you come back at dinner, and you've got this nice piping hot,
you bet,
delicious meal ready to go.
So it's not just for hats, then, is what you're saying.
That's right.
Multi-purpose.
Tinfoil, not just for hats anymore.
Yeah.
That's right.
So pick up an extra box for cooking too, not just the hats, right?
That's right. Actually, Blizzard mentioned cooking the steak, wrap it up in tinfoil on the manifold.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I guess it would seal the fat in. Hopefully, it wouldn't stick to the tinfoil. I wouldn't think it would.
Yeah. Let's see. One other thing I came across.
Wrap it in parchment paper, then wrap it in tinfoil, and you're good to go.
There you go. Another thing, I don't think we talked about this, was a single log stove. I've also heard it referred to as a Swedish fire log. You take like an 8 or 10 inch diameter log, split it 4 ways down the middle, kind of pull that log apart, and then you start your fire right in the center of that log. It'll burn from the inside out. That's going to help keep that heat, funnel it up towards whatever pot or whatever you have sitting on top of it. Kind of goes along with that minimalist camping cooking. And I guess the only other thing I had was maybe if you're doing a big project outside, you want to put in like an outdoor grill or pizza oven. I've seen some fancy landscape setups with those. That would be sweet. But that's a pretty substantial investment, I think, to make something like that. So
yeah, especially if you live in an environment where it snows 6 months a year.
Yeah, exactly.
it might not be the highest thing on your priority list. Yeah.
The Swedish fire log, though, I've seen a few YouTube videos on that. It's actually pretty cool how it just it also supports the pot as well as keeps the flame going. Right. It's pretty cool.
Pretty efficient, yeah.
I have a challenge for Tim Gilby on the YouTube comments. He says he's got a setup made from stainless buckets that can boil water with a few tea light candles in a few minutes.
Wow.
Pictures or it didn't happen.
Or it didn't happen.
We have to see an email review on that one for sure.
Yep.
Right. I guess going along with that boiling water, I mean, anything you can cook in boiling water is going to be, it's going to be pretty easy to boil water, at least a lot easier to boil water than cook a perfect steak on open fire or something like that. I know I went to a crawfish boil one time where they actually cooked a cooler full of corn with boiling water. They just filled it up with corn and potatoes, dumped their boiling water in. It sat in the cooler for 20, 30 minutes, and then it was perfectly cooked after that.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
That is certainly a way to do it. Yeah. So it's having the right tools on hand is important too. I mean, go back to the cast iron episode, a Dutch oven, a nice big fry pan. They do take a little bit longer to heat up, but they're also going to stay warmer longer. And when you don't have the fine control of a good gas grill, then or an electric grill or an electric stove, then you've got a little bit less chance of ruining your food.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. So I guess
And
anybody.
when it comes time, and just one of those good planning things. When it comes time, cook the food in your fridge first, in your freezer second, and then get into your non-perishable preps.
Right.
Especially if the power's going to be out for any length of time. Get the stuff that's raw cooked. It's going to take longer to spoil that way, and keep it cool. Keep it in a cool, dry place.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me to add that to the podcast episode, to the next to the podcast idea episode or document. I had a thought for how we can keep the opposite of this, of keeping food cool in a power outage.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Different topic entirely, but remind me to add that to the list.
Yeah,
Right.
no, for sure.
Yeah. Did anybody else have any other cooking ideas?
Any recipes?
Recipes. That's a good idea.
Boil water, add to soup.
There you
Well,
go.
I mean those foil packets. I mean you can do those in literally any of these applications. Those foil packets are something. I mean I've been doing those for years, and I always found that ground meat was the best. Ground beef, whatever veggies you like. Throw a little bit of sauce in there, some salt and pepper. Wrap that up and just tuck it away for a little bit. Of course, the longer you do, the more kind of savory it gets. But we always did peas and corn, and carrots, like the mixed veggies. Put it in the pack. We always used. It was just something that ended up a kind of a tradition when I was in Scouts. Was we used bullseye barbecue sauce because somebody brought a bottle one time and it just kind of became a thing. So we always did bullseye barbecue sauce with those, and then that was our kind of one of the things I remember from Scout camp was those foil packets. And again, they can do on anything. You can do that in a solar oven. You can do that over a fire. You can do those in a wood fire, over a gas grill, whatever you want. So those are pretty universal.
Mm-hmm. I guess one other thing I just thought of with cooking without electricity. Do any of you guys do like smoking meats or anything like that? That'd be a good way.
I have to admit a failure here. I have a Big Chief smoker I bought on Canadian Tire Black Friday 2 years ago, maybe 3.
Okay.
Still sitting in the wrapper. It's in the storage shed. So I got this Big Chief smoker for half price, and it's not one of those automatic electric. Like, cause I wanted no electricity required. I wanted all the manual everything. Yeah. But there's an art form to that and a time requirement, which I don't have right now. So I've got the smoker sitting there. It's a long-term to-do project, but I've never tried it.
Right.
Yeah.
I know I got a buddy that made one out of a 55-gallon steel drum and basically just cut the top off of it, put a few grates in there, and you just start a fire in the bottom with your charcoal, and apparently it worked good. It's not something I've ever gotten into, but thought maybe you guys had. So another idea.
No, it's something that I want to do. It's probably a 2 years from now project, but it's actually I saw one that was pretty cool. Somebody made one out of a filing cabinet, like a 4-drawer filing cabinet.
Yeah.
You let the fire in the bottom drawer, and then you can stack whatever you want in the top 3 drawers.
I've seen everything from hot water tanks, fridges, used outhouses.
Oh yeah, the old.
I've seen, but you can actually buy one thing that I thought was really cool though. Is you can buy cast iron hardware to put on 2 barrels, and you basically get a double barrel system where you have 2 pipes running up. And if you use 2 45-gallon barrels, you get the fire on the bottom and the meat on top. It actually looks really cool. That would be like when I'm retired and have tons of time to kill with a MIG welder or something that will work on barrels anyway. That'd be great. But
yeah, I know people who use a similar setup for doing maple sap and stuff as well, boiling the sap off and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely an idea, but I don't have enough experience with it to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we'll that might be something we should dedicate. We should dedicate another episode to. It is smoking, because it's an excellent way to preserve meat long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to get a subject matter expert on for that one, because I don't know it. First thing
something I don't know anything about either.
The lazy prepper in me wants to get the full auto electric one that has the pucks in the bottom and the elements and everything else. We just turn a dial and tell it what temperature you want and everything else. But it kind of takes away from the whole philosophy, I guess. But anyway, that's pretty much it. You guys got anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess, with cooking without electricity, it means you're going to be cleaning, doing your dishes without running water, most likely. So what we've started doing around here, we usually buy just Dawn dish soap in the larger bottles, and then we refill that into the smaller bottles. But when that large bottle runs out, just go ahead and fill it up with water. The residual soap kind of left on the walls and on the bottom, that's going to be enough to concentrate it and still be effective for cleaning. Throw that on a shelf in the basement. It's already clearly labeled with what it is. And you can, it's just a good way to recycle and still be prepared to, clean your dishes. You're still going to need to clean your forks and knives and plates off during a power outage. So just another thought. Works with laundry soap, hand soap, body wash, shampoo, conditioner, all those other things. So just a good idea for you guys.
Absolutely.
And Dawn dish soap works best for cleaning up brass with steel pins.
Okay.
There you go.
Another use for it.
This episode brought to you by Dawn. Dawn.
Yeah,
All your
really,
survival needs.
we're supposed to get the sponsor first before we plug them. Anyway.
if we plug them, they will come.
Yeah, that's right. There's another joke in there somewhere. Ooh. Yeah. Anyway,
and I think that's a good time to move on to the podcast challenge.
That's right. Okay, so podcast challenge this month is store enough cooking ability for 1 month without power, which sounds daunting, but not really.
A couple propane tanks, right?
Yeah, like I said, if you have a propane powered barbecue and you just get a spare tank, so that even if your propane tank runs out, you still got a full 20-pounder, then you pretty much got a month's supply if you go judicious with it.
If you're not out there smoking ribs and
yeah, everything else.
cooking.
You probably got enough to run a camp stove for a month. I'm thinking with a 20-pounder. I mean, if you really stretch it, but I mean, so yeah, get a couple extra 20-pounders, you're good to go. Or find something on Craigslist for a used tank that's still good and refillable. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
So it should be a relatively cheap podcast challenge to do.
Yeah.
Upcoming events, anyone?
No, Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah,
If
get
you
prepared.
celebrate it, Merry Christmas. If not, well, then you're a communist. So
That's right. You mean you don't call it your winter celebration or your
Festivus for the rest of us.
That's right. Cool. Got a email review. Eric has not allowed us to access the iTunes reviews because he's been playing hooky for the last couple of weeks. But anyways, we do have a Facebook review from Jake. Alan, you want to read that one?
Sure. Jake says, "Howdy, fellas. Just discovered your podcast on Spotify last week. I drive alone quite a bit at work, so I burn through podcasts quite fast. Just finished up fortifying the Doomstead today." All right. Quite entertaining and a great way to kill the day. We feel the same way, just for the record. Have heard quite a lot of helpful and interesting things in your episodes so far. Grew up spending lots of time outdoors as we lived in a fairly rural area on 100+ acres with one neighbor. Spent 3 years in the Army Reserve while in high school, learned a lot of valuable skills, a lot of which I still use today. Has worked for CP Rail going on 15 years, couldn't pay me enough to sit in an office all day. Amen. Into hunting, fishing, ATV, and camping, and I've always done my best to make sure that I'm prepared for whatever life and nature can throw at me. Look forward to future episodes and hopefully some in-depth discussion on some topics. Jake, awesome. Thank you so much for the review. We love hearing from everybody. Let us know what in-depth discussion you want to hear. Did we skip over something? Do you want to learn more? Do you want to circle back to something else? We're not running out of ideas, but that doesn't mean that we can't change course and go back and revisit something. And if you decide that one of those times when you're not on the road, you want to come on an episode, then give us a topic and we'll work it in.
Or if you got
welcome, Jake.
Yeah, and if you're a subject matter expert on something like smoking, we could use you.
Yes.
For sure.
Smoking meat specifically.
yeah, not just smoking cigarettes. Anybody can do that. But I mean, I heard it's cheap and good for you, so why not?
Yeah, I mean, what could be wrong with it? If it were wrong, the government would make it illegal.
That's right. That's good tax revenue, at least. That's the good thing about it. Okay, I guess we'll bring us to the outro here. So I'm going to bring episode 44 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Take a few minutes and submit a review. It helps other people find us. And you can also find us at prepperpodcast.ca and on Facebook.
We do record these shows on StreamYard. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast. Click the link click the notification tab that gives you alerts when we are going live. You can also find us on Facebook Live doing the exact same thing. So through the Facebook page, alerts and all that good stuff. I don't Facebook, so I don't know how that works exactly, but apparently it's a thing. Apparently. If you want to contact me directly, you can find me on Instagram at ppswo, because somehow Instagram is morally superior to Facebook.
Is it really?
No. No.
But you get all those cool filters. You can look old or hot or whatever, or
exactly
like a baby, whatever.
Yep.
Funny. Yeah, so we're working to get maybe a homestead farm page going on social media. So I'm not going to put my personal email out there yet, but hope to have a contact for you guys very soon if you want to reach out and maybe kind of keep track of what we're doing here on Homestead.
In the meantime, you can, if you want to get a hold of Tyler, shoot an email to feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, and we will filter it out to him that way, or through the website. Sorry, not the website, the Facebook page. We can we can pass on a message that way.
Cool. You can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com, and you can also find me on Canadian Patriot Podcast, which is also available on iTunes and YouTube. There you can find us discussing more government waste, squirreling off on the odd firearms-related banter, and exposing the daily loss of freedoms we're facing.
Doesn't it sound great the way he says that? He's so enthusiastic about losing freedoms.
It's continuous. It's consistent, and it's the government's been quite relentless with it. So there's always lots to talk about, which is good.
There's always lots to talk about.
Yeah.
While you're lamenting that, please check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. There you can get Eric live on the chat, find some really cool prepper gear. You can also email feedback@theprepperpodcast.ca while you're buying your prepper gear at Rapid Survival. Now is a great time to stock up on things like water filtration and things to keep yourself warm and stuff to dig yourself out of the snow.
I think he's still trying to get rid of some life straws too.
Yeah, that's water stuff. Yeah, life straws. Get them.
Yeah. Hopefully get some Sawyers too. I want to buy some off him one of these days. But
buy all the life straws. Then he's got room for more inventory.
Oh, I told him I can't do that. All right. So thanks for joining us, and tune in for the next episode where we're going to be talking about signaling for help,
which I'm doing right now.
Help.
Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning. Take care, guys.